I was very much looking forward to seeing Ridley Scott's Napoleon, and I'm a big fan of both the director and the star Joaquin Phoenix. But is the movie any good? And also, is it historically accurate? Well, let's see. Despite being an Englishman through and through, like many on this side of the channel, I have a grudging admiration for the so-called Corsican ogre, a man who rose from relative obscurity to end up crowning himself as Emperor of the French, and much more besides. But this film has to be one of the most negative portrayals of Napoleon since the propaganda lampoons printed in a fearful England when he was carving up Europe. He is shown as an incompetent lover, an ineffective leader, and a military nincompoop. It was only begrudgingly that one of the finest military tacticians in history was shown to be in any way successful, and this was largely restricted to his greatest victory at the Battle of Austerlitz. The possibly Pyrrhic Borodino was mostly glossed over, and the Emperor was shown to be a rather sad and pathetic character. On his return to France from exile on the island of Elba, Napoleon was greeted rapturously by his former soldiers, but nowhere in the film did he earn this reception. It is commonly held that Napoleon was beloved of his men, despite the disaster of the invasion of Russia. The film, and by dint of it this review, veers all over the place. It tries to do too much, breezily jumping years and sometimes decades at a time with no real character development. You can really tell that Ridley Scott is no fan of Napoleon. I wonder how this film is being received in France. I suspect not very well. There are some positives, however. The battle scenes are wonderful to behold, but they are too few for a film about a man who is primarily known for his military genius. Waterloo is depicted as a one-sided catastrophe when, in reality, it could have gone either way. There were some nice tactical nods, like the British duly forming square to repel the French cavalry and then adopting line to engage with the French infantry. The film was highly stylised, but had a washed-out colour palette that rendered the blues and golds of the French fighting force, the greatest army in Europe at the time, as a dreary and bedraggled bunch, led by a lovesick and melancholy loser whose hat kept falling off. And there were plenty of excruciating sub-comedy moments where it verged on farce. It reminded me of the Blackadder episode about the Scarlet Pimpernel at times, as silly frou-frouery, little carried dogs and straggly wigs began to overwhelm proceedings. Thankfully there were no fake facial moles, and no one put on any over-the-top French accents, or this may have flopped like a sunken soufflé. In short, if you pardonnez le pun, it's a hit piece. It's worth watching for some fine performances in places, but there's little for the cast to work with. It tries to do so much that it feels threadbare and seemed small-scale at times, which let down some of the better set pieces. And then there is the criticism that the film plays fast and loose with historical accuracy. There's the widely discussed scene where Napoleon fires cannons at the pyramids at Giza, which Scott says is a shorthand way of demonstrating Napoleon's positive results against the Mamluks. But far from being a destroyer and defiler of ancient Egyptian relics, Napoleon did much to further their study. This might be forgiven under better circumstances, but not here. And then there are scenes where the Emperor is seen charging into battle on horseback, sabre drawn, highly improbable and actually somewhat silly. Napoleon, despite the negative publicity around his diminutive stature, was a towering figure in Europe and indeed global history. This film very much sells him and the great man conception of history short. And not just short, but sad, bereft and dim-witted. My, at Waterloo Napoleon did surrender, as ABBA once famously regaled us, and when the Emperor met his nemesis, Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, the British commander fares little better in terms of his portrayal. He is a veritable caricature of all that stereotypical British pomposity and sneer. Think that meme where someone in a powdered wig from the Patriot snort laughs in British, and you'll be close to the mark. There was definitely ambition here, but sadly personal feelings on the part of the director seem to have stifled what could have been a masterpiece. Napoleon is credited with saying that history is a set of lies agreed upon. Well, in that case, oui monsieur, vous avez raison. But what did you think of Napoleon? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and most importantly subscribe. And you can also support the channel on Subscribestar via the link in the description, or via YouTube Super Thanks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.